Good morning and welcome to Bible Truth for Kids. Imagine that you have a big event tomorrow. Like maybe you've got some hockey playoffs that you're involved in. Or maybe you have a lacrosse tournament that you're playing in. What would you do to prepare for that day? Well, I'm pretty sure that you would make sure you had all your equipment together. And maybe you'd get a good night's sleep. And I'm pretty sure that you would do everything that your coach told you to do to prepare. Would it surprise you to know that Jesus prepared for the cross? I mean, it wasn't a surprise to him. He knew that he was going to die, and so he prepared. Today our story is called The Evening Before the Cross. Now, in the final week of Jesus' life, which is the Passion Week, we have had Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, but Wednesday, there is no record in the Bible of what happened on Wednesday. So now it's Thursday. Thursday is the last day with the disciples. Now, Jesus had 12 disciples, and they went everywhere with Jesus. He taught them. He sent them out on missions. They witnessed his miracles. They witnessed all of his conflict that he had with the Pharisees. But one of those disciples was a traitor. His name was Judas. All that time he was a disciple of Jesus, he was just pretending that he loved Jesus. He really didn't. The Bible tells us that, for one thing, Judas was a thief. Judas was in charge of the money bag for all of the disciples because, they traveled everywhere. And so they needed money to buy food and other things. And Judas often helped himself to the money that was in their bag. And in fact, even now, Judas is off conspiring with the Pharisees. He said, I will hand Jesus over to you if you pay me 30 pieces of silver. And they agreed. And so now Judas is just waiting for an opportunity to hand Jesus over to the Pharisees, to betray him. Now it's Thursday afternoon, and Jesus told his disciples, I want you to go into Jerusalem and find a certain man, and this man will let you use the upper room in his house, and I want you to go there and prepare the Passover that I am going to celebrate with you. The Passover celebration. Like, what is the Passover? Well, thousands of years ago, Jesus' people, the Israelites, they were slaves in Egypt. And God sent 9 plagues on Egypt to try to get Pharaoh to let his people go. Plagues like frogs and flies and gnats. Pharaoh, he wouldn't. So God said, I'm going to send a 10th plague. And what is going to happen is that at midnight, the firstborn son in all the households over Egypt will die. But God told his people how to prepare for that. He told them everyone is to take a lamb from their flock, a perfect lamb, so one that doesn't have any spots or sores or is crippled or anything like that. But take a perfect lamb, and you're to kill it, and then you are to put some of the blood of the lamb around the door frame. So up on top and down the sides, they were to put the lamb's blood. And that night, Jesus sent the angel of death over Egypt. And every Egyptian household lost their firstborn son. They died. But not in the homes that had the blood on the doorway. The angel of death passed over them. That's where the name Passover comes from. And that very night, Moses led God's people out of Egypt. And so ever since then, the Israelites have celebrated the Passover every year. And that's why Jerusalem right now is jam-packed full of people, because they've come from everywhere to celebrate the Passover. Now, as Jesus was sitting down with his disciples in that upper room, sharing the Passover supper with them, he said to them, one of you is going to betray me. Well, they couldn't have been more shocked. They said, well, like, who is it? I mean, is it me? I mean, Judas, It was Judas, but he had done such a good job of keeping it a secret that he didn't love Jesus, that no one suspected Judas. And so then Judas said to Jesus, "Is it me?" Jesus said, "You've said it." And then Judas left them. He went out to the Pharisees to tell them what his plan was. Now, after Judas had gone, Jesus took the bread and the wine that was on the table, and he passed it around to them, and he said, "This bread is a symbol of my body, which is going to be broken on the cross for you. And this wine is a symbol of my blood that is going to be shed on the cross for the forgiveness of sins." And so they all ate the bread and they drank some of the wine. And Jesus said, "Remember me by doing this until I return again." You know, that's what we do in our churches now. Some people call it the Lord's Supper. Some people call it communion. But we are doing this until Jesus comes back again. And when we do it, we are just remembering his death for us on the cross. Now, after they had finished supper, they sang a hymn together, and then they went out. They were going back to the Mount of Olives. And on the way, Jesus told them what was going to happen that night. He said, "I am going to be betrayed and arrested, and all of you are going to desert me." But you know, that would not change Jesus' love for them. But Peter just refused to believe Jesus. He said, "Lord, I will never desert you, and I will never pretend that I don't know you." But Jesus turned to Peter and he said, "Peter, before the rooster crows Friday morning, you will pretend that you don't know me 3 times. Well, when they got to the Mount of Olives, they went into a garden called Gethsemane. They went there often. And Jesus said to his disciples, "Now you stay here and wait for me while I go and pray." And then he took Peter, James, and John with him a little further. And he told them, he said, "You stay here and pray with me while I go and pray." And so Jesus went about a stone's throw further from those 3 disciples. And, you know, he fell down on the ground and he prayed hard. You know, he knew that in just a very short time, he was going to experience extreme physical suffering. But not just that, he was going to experience God's judgment for sin on him. You know, Jesus never knew any sin. He'd never done anything wrong. He'd never even had a bad thought. But when Jesus was going to be on the cross, God was going to put the whole weight of the world's sin on Jesus. And he would die on the cross paying for sin and its consequences. And so Jesus prayed, "Father, if there's any other way, then please let it be. But if not, I will go to the cross." And you know, God sent an angel to strengthen him there in the garden. Well, when Jesus went back to Peter, James, and John, they were sleeping. And he woke them and he said, "Couldn't you stay awake and pray with me just 1 hour?" And then Jesus went away again and prayed. And he came back. And they had fallen asleep again. And he woke them up again. And then he went back a 3rd time. And he came back. Each time Jesus was praying the same thing. And this time Jesus woke them up and he said, "Wake up. It's time to go." And you know, even as Jesus was speaking to them, there was a crowd coming to arrest Jesus. And next week we'll find out what happened in that garden. You know, in today's story, we have seen Jesus preparing for the cross, even while people were plotting to kill him and knowing that his disciples, they were going to desert him when he got arrested. They'd all run away. But even so, Jesus prepared to go to the cross. Nothing would stop him. He was faithful to prepare to die for the sins of you and me and the whole world. You know, there is no one more wonderful than Jesus. All right, see you next time.